I never thought my own sister would do that. Not her. Not to me. We were driving north on the I-17, headed toward Flagstaff for our cousin Jessica's baby shower. Just the two of us. Windows halfway down, the Arizona heat still crawling into the car like it had a grudge to settle. It was supposed to be a simple road trip, 5 hours max. But I could feel it in the air. Something was off. We'd grown up under the same roof, shared the same birthdays, holidays, losses. But there was always this distance. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. Just this quiet understanding that we tolerated each other more than we connected. Still, when Mom was dying, she'd said it clear as day, holding both our hands. Look out for each other. That was her last real request. I'd carried it like a weight ever since. The car hummed along, but the silence grew thicker than the air. I tried talking, asked about her job, her apartment, even her new boyfriend. Her responses were clipped, distracted. Eyes on her phone, thumb scrolling like she couldn't wait for the next notification. She laughed at something on her screen, didn't share what it was. I remembered her whispering the night before, pacing the motel parking lot in her slippers. When I asked, she waved it off. Just work. Even now, she groaned at gas prices, cursed the GPS for rerouting us, snapped when I asked if she wanted music on. Why are you being so tense? I asked finally, trying to cut through it. She didn't answer, just stared ahead. I turned to the window, let the wind hit my face. I felt like I was being tolerated, not traveled with. Then, the car slowed. No signs around, just desert. Yellow-gray sand stretching endlessly, one crooked saguaro watching us from the distance. I think something's up with the engine, she said. She pulled over, popped the hood. You want to check the back tire? She asked, already stepping out. I got out, walked to the rear, crouched beside the back right. I didn't hear anything unusual. Then I heard the car door slam and the sound of wheels spinning into dust. I turned just in time to see the taillights shrinking away. I ran forward, waving my arms. What the hell, Ellie? Stop! But she didn't even glance back. I stood there, my hand still on the tire cap. Nothing. No bag, no phone charger, just heat and silence. All I could remember, looping like a broken cassette, was her muttering the day before as she scrolled through her texts. I'm done pretending. She meant it. My phone blinked at 3%. No signal, just the battery icon mocking me. The sun was past its peak, but the heat hadn't backed off. I scanned the horizon. No cars, no sounds, nothing but wind and dust. I considered walking back toward the gas station we passed 30 minutes ago, but even that felt like a gamble. The road ahead? No clue where it led. Time passed. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been an hour. I tried not to cry. Not out there, not like that. Instead, I sat on a flat rock by the side of the road, pulled my knees in, and waited. Flashbacks came uninvited. Like the time she left me at the skating rink on my 12th birthday, said she forgot. Or the Christmas she regifted me something I'd given her the year before, and still, I'd always made excuses. She's just tired. She's under pressure. But standing alone on that highway, I couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't new, I whispered. Just more final. Eventually, a red semi-truck slowed down and stopped a few feet ahead. A man in his 50s stepped out, worn baseball cap, sun-wrinkled eyes. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't. Just left. He didn't pry. Just handed me a bottle of water, waited while I took a long sip. Name's Clay, he said. You need to call someone? I used his phone to call roadside assistance. No one picked up. Left a message. He offered to take me to the nearest rest stop. I got in. The seat was hot, smelled like leather and tobacco. We drove in silence for a while. Then he said something that stuck. People'll show you who they are. It's up to you to believe 'em. I didn't answer. I just stared ahead. Later, at the rest stop, I borrowed a charger and sat outside on a bench. Opened my notes app, started typing, not to complain, just to make sense of it. Because if I didn't write it down, it'd slip into that space where hurt goes unspoken and gets heavier by the day. When I walked into my house that evening, something was missing. And it wasn't just the spare key. I hadn't gone home right away. After that mess on the highway, Clay had dropped me at a friend's place in Tempe. I told her I just needed a couple nights. It turned into a week. I wasn't avoiding my house, I just didn't know how to face it. There's something about being left in the middle of nowhere by someone who's known your every scar that makes you question what home even means. But that evening, with the sun dipping behind the neighbors' roofs, I stood on my front porch. The breeze was soft, the kind that carries just enough warmth to feel personal. The mailbox was stuffed. Flyers, catalogs, envelopes from places I didn't remember subscribing to. One of the trash bins had been rolled 2 feet from where I always left it. It looked like nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. My keys rattled louder than they should have. My fingers trembled, not from fear exactly, more like the body remembering a wound before the mind catches up. You think you know what coming home feels like, until it doesn't feel like yours anymore. I stepped inside. Everything looked fine. Nothing broken. Nothing clearly moved. But still, something was off. The guest room light was on. I hadn't touched that room in weeks. The door creaked as I nudged it open. The lamp by the bed glowed softly, like someone had just stepped out for a minute. I walked into the kitchen. One of the top cabinets was cracked open. That one was mine. I always close it. Always. A family photo near the front door, the one of me, Ellie, and our parents at the Grand Canyon, was missing from the frame. The frame was still hanging, empty. My laptop sat on the dining table, exactly where I left it. But when I opened it, the browser history was wiped clean. All of it. That's not something you do by accident. I went to my room. I'd left a note for myself on the nightstand, just a quick grocery list. Gone. I opened my security app, checked the logs. The system had been disarmed for 4 hours, between 1:13 a.m. and 5:22 a.m., 2 nights ago. I'd been at Jenna's. I didn't remember doing that, and it wasn't scheduled. Something crawled down my spine. Not fear. Not yet. Just a slow recognition. I tore through the house, room by room, closet by closet. Opened the crawlspace door. Nothing. No one. But the question clung to me. Who? And then it clicked. Something Ellie had said years ago, after we had a fight over Mom's will. I was locking the back door, and she'd mumbled on her way out, "Don't think I don't know how to get in if I ever need to." I called the alarm company. The woman on the line was polite, but her voice tensed when I asked for access logs. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Your access code was used, but from a new device ID. It's not one we've registered before." "New device?" I asked. "Yes, could have been a cloned remote or someone manually entering the code." She didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. Someone who knew your code. I hung up and sat on the edge of the couch, so it wasn't enough to leave me in the dirt. She had to come walk through my silence, too. I stared at the empty photo frame for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called a locksmith. Russ arrived an hour later. Kind man, in his 60s. Smelled like sawdust and pipe tobacco. "Break-in?" he asked, glancing at the door frame. "Not technically," I said, "but the locks go today." As he worked, he talked. Not too much, just enough. "Funny thing about locks," he said while drilling the new deadbolt. "They're not always about keeping folks out. Sometimes it's about reminding yourself who stays in." He stepped back. I tested the handle. Click. The sound was small, but it felt like thunder in my chest. He handed me the new key. I held it for a beat, then went to the kitchen and tossed the old key ring, every last one of them, straight into the trash. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch doing it. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand. I scrolled to Ellie's name, tapped it. No answer. Of course not. I waited for the beep, then said calmly, "You walked away once. Don't walk in again." No yelling, no crying, just airtight control. And then I blocked her number. For the first time in my life, it didn't feel triumphant, but it did feel like a line in the sand, a line I wasn't stepping back over. The next morning, I opened the front door to grab the paper and froze. Something was on the doormat. Small, personal, something only she would have left. I stepped outside before dawn, breathing in the cool desert air. The sky was still dim, the world just stirring. I needed fresh air, a moment to steady a mind still reeling from last night's lock decisions. That's when I saw it. A small square package sitting on my welcome mat. No postage stamp, no delivery label, just me, hand-delivered. The wrapping was floral, soft pinks, pale blues, patterns from my mother's old linens. I recognized them instantly. A shock washed over me, odd and heavy. No note, no signature. My name scrawled there in handwriting I had seen 1,000 times, but never expected to see again. I hesitated. My fingers came forward, hovered over the package. It felt like touching a memory wrapped in threat. I brought it inside, placed it gently on the countertop. In the kitchen, the morning sun filtered through blinds, slats casting lines across the wrapper. My hands trembled as I peeled back the paper. Inside lay the bracelet. The one I lost years ago, on that camping trip near Willow Creek. I never told anyone, not even Ellie. That bracelet, thin silver chain, little leaf charm, it had slipped off into murky water, vanished in the shadows. I mourned it quietly, assumed I lost it for good. Now here it was, in my hands. It felt like a message, a deliberate act. Someone had hunted it down, tracked it from memory, then left it in my home. Not for me, against me. I remembered that trip. The lake's still water, the mosquito dusk. Ellie and I arguing. She said I was weak, that I didn't fight enough. The undercurrent always there. You don't deserve more. I whispered, lips dry. It wasn't just a gift. It was a message. I know more than you think. I paced the room, checked the windows, peered at my doors. No sign of forced entry, no footprints in the yard. I flipped through my security app, no alerts, no motion records. The package must have come when cameras were off or someone disabled them deliberately. I wanted to ring the police, but what would I tell them? That someone reunited a lost bracelet? That my home had been violated so quietly it left no trace but psychological fingerprints? My mind raced. Suppose it wasn't Ellie but someone else, someone angry, someone who knew my secrets. That afternoon, I called Kendra. She came over to drink iced tea on my porch. She studies how trauma plays in relationships. She listened, calm, then said, "Sometimes abusers send gifts to reclaim space, to let you know they still have power over you, even when they're absent." I stared at the bracelet in her palm. She urged me to document everything. Photographs, dates, emotional reactions, every detail. I felt parts of me bristle, parts of me coil inward. She said something simple. Manipulation doesn't have to be loud to be deadly. That hit me harder than anything. That evening, I sat at my desk, lamp low. I wrote a letter, just to myself. She wants the past to haunt me, but I decide which ghosts stay. Then I opened a locked drawer in my nightstand, took the bracelet, placed it inside, taped the drawer shut, firm, deliberate. I didn't weep. I didn't scream. Instead, I let a cold clarity settle. I chose to become strategist rather than victim. Later, my doorbell rang. Twice, I froze. My heart slammed. But whoever stood outside was gone by the time I reached the door. No one there. I pulled into the driveway late that afternoon, sunlight glaring off the hood. I sat there for a while, engine ticking. In the rear view, the gravel path behind the gate looked undisturbed, but it wasn't. I knew better now. As I stepped through the side gate, I noticed something off. The gravel was uneven, lighter patches where it had been disturbed. A footprint, partly swept, like someone had tried to hide they'd been there. My eyes moved to the back window, ajar, not broken, just cracked open an inch. I never left that window open. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo, time-stamped it. Kendra's words echoed, steady in my head. Document everything. Reclaim your space. I walked inside and straight to the kitchen. set the bracelet on the counter like a warning flare. Then I dialed the locksmith. Russ showed up just after 5, old toolbox in one hand, clipboard in the other, weathered face, soft voice. "You're the one with the odd backdoor bolt, right?" he asked, stepping in. "That's me," I said, trying to sound casual. He moved through the house methodically, front, back, garage, replacing every lock. Each time that deadbolt clicked into place, I felt something slide off my chest. Not fear, just weight I'd carried too long. "You'd be surprised," he said, pulling out an old knob. "How many people change their locks after someone they love turns?" He didn't ask for my story, just kept working, steady hands, kind eyes. I watched him box the old hardware, scribbling discarded on the side. Funny how that word fit more than just the locks. I documented each step with my phone. Not out of fear, out of strategy. My breathing was slow, but my hands still shook. It wasn't over, but it was turning. When Russ left, I walked the house again. The light had shifted. Evening stretched long across the floorboards. Back in my living room, I checked the security logs. And that's when it hit me. There was a door entry recorded, just last night, but that couldn't be. The new locks weren't installed until this afternoon. The entry used my code, but not from my phone. A different device ID. Not a glitch, not a fluke. My sister knew the old code, but even if I'd changed it, something told me she'd still find her way in. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled down an old journal from years back. Ellie's. I'd kept one volume after we packed Mom's things. On the inside cover, her handwriting, the loops, the pressure. It was the same as the name on the package. This wasn't random. This wasn't impulse. This was personal. She wasn't just trying to unsettle me. She was trying to remind me. She could reach me, anytime, anywhere. Night came slowly. I turned off every light, walked the perimeter, tugged each window, latched every gate, set the new alarm. Red light blinked softly on the panel. I poured a glass of water, leaned over the counter. The wrapping from the package was still there. I stared at it, slowly unfolding the edges, corners frayed from my own handling. Then I saw it. One edge was glued, not taped, not folded, re-glued, as if someone had carefully resealed it after placing the bracelet inside. I whispered out loud, low and even, "You didn't just leave a gift. You left a challenge." And I took it. Just past midnight, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I answered. A thin voice crackled on the line. Feminine. Measured. "You should have changed sooner." Click. I stood there, phone still at my ear, silence thicker than the walls. She didn't call to talk. She called to remind me this wasn't over, that she was watching, that the game was active. I turned toward the window, drawn blinds still. And then, movement. Not a figure, not a shadow. A car, slow, just passing, but not unfamiliar. Jill didn't ask. She insisted. "It's time," she said over the phone, her voice too soft to be neutral. "You need to come. It's just family. Let's clear the air." I showed up alone. Neutral outfit, keys in hand, parked on the far end of the cul-de-sac. I told myself I'd stay 30 minutes, tops, just long enough to keep the peace. The moment I stepped into the backyard, I felt it. That slight tension in people's eyes, like they were watching for a show they hoped wouldn't start too soon. Everyone smiled too wide, plates clinked, music played low, and laughter rose from somewhere near the grill, but it didn't reach me. She was already there. Ellie stood near the patio, red Solo cup in hand, chatting like she belonged in every room she entered. As if the past month had been nothing more than a hiccup in our sisterhood. I watched her throw her head back in laughter, her arm brushing against an uncle's sleeve like old charm hadn't curdled in her mouth. I stayed close to the side fence, near the citronella torches, eyes on the cooler, pretending I was deciding between water or soda. Inside, I whispered, "Don't let the story be rewritten in your silence." Jill gathered everyone for a toast. "Let's just take a second," she said, lifting her glass. "To healing, to family, and to moving forward." People shuffled closer, plastic cups raised. Ellie stepped forward. "I just want to say something," she said, with a smile too calculated to be kind. About my baby sister. My stomach turned. She's always been the emotional one, Ellie started. Very sensitive. Takes everything to heart. But hey, some people just feel more deeply, right? A few laughs. Uneasy ones. I mean, sometimes it's like walking on eggshells with her. But that's what makes her so special. She smiled at me like she hadn't weaponized every word. The heat on my face wasn't from the sun. It was betrayal, thick and rising. I set my drink down, took a slow step forward. I'm glad you all made time to be here, I said. My voice didn't shake. Since we're talking about family, silence. I remember a time, I said, not too long ago. I was left on the side of the road. No ride, no explanation, just forgotten. People glanced at each other. Some froze mid-sip. I remember thinking, this must be what disposable feels like. When someone walks away, not just physically, but deliberately, and you're left with more questions than breath. Ellie raised her hand, interrupting. Oh, come on! You had the keys, I said, turning to her. You had the choice, and you made it. Dead quiet. You don't get to laugh at someone's pain and call it love. You don't get to rewrite what you did just because it makes you uncomfortable to hear it out loud. She opened her mouth again, but no sound came. I looked around. To anyone else who's ever been told they were too much or too sensitive, sometimes sensitivity is just another word for paying attention. With that, I nodded to Jill, picked up my keys, and walked out the gate. By the time I got to the car, footsteps followed. One cousin hugged me without a word. Another just nodded, lips tight, eyes wide. Jill texted me an hour later. You did what none of us ever could. Ellie didn't reach out. Not that night, not the next. And for the first time in a while, her silence felt like proof that the power had shifted. That night, I wrote everything down, not because I was afraid I'd forget, but because it was time to start recording everything, like evidence, not memory. When people lie loud, I've learned, truth doesn't need to yell back. It just has to sit still, long enough to be undeniable. 3 days later, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. Inside was a subpoena, and her name was listed as a witness. All day, I felt it. That tug in my gut. Not panic exactly, but a stillness that warned me something was coming. Not loud, not obvious, but real. The kind of quiet that settles just before a storm rolls in. I tried to keep my hands busy, swept the patio, folded towels, even wiped down the baseboards. None of it helped. That wrapper, the way it had been re-glued, the new locks, the blocked call. All of it kept circling my head like buzzards. By late afternoon, I was sitting in the living room, not even pretending to read. Curtains pulled halfway, the light outside turning that odd gray pink that makes shadows stretch and lean into corners. Then my phone buzzed. No contact name, just a message. Remember 2001? My throat tightened. That year, that trip, that secret. Only she and I ever talked about it. Only once. I opened my backup drive. I had kept a copy of everything, photos, letters, videos. Back then, we used a handheld camcorder. I found the clip labeled Campsite Birthday and hit play. At first, it was what I remembered. Marshmallows, singing, Dad's off-key voice. Then things shifted. The footage jerked like someone had spliced it. Faces blurred, audio cut in and out. Then came the whisper, clear as day. Ellie, leaning into Mom, whispering, "We'll fix this later." I paused the video, rewound, played it again. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't joking. And then, nothing. The screen went black, and my voice, years younger but already tired, cut through. Why did you do that? I stared at the screen. That wasn't how the video originally ended. Someone had cut it. Not someone, her. I shoved the laptop away and opened the old jewelry box Mom used to keep her church pins and stamps. I hadn't looked inside since she passed. I dug through the bottom, past broken brooches and stiff rubber bands. Behind a photo of us at the lake, I found it. An envelope, folded once, worn at the edges. My name on the front, her handwriting. I opened it. To Ev. I never got to finish saying what I meant, but I know you deserve more than shadows. I know I didn't speak up when I should have. There are things I can't change now, but that doesn't mean you imagined them. You didn't. Love, Mom. Dated 3 months before her stroke. It wasn't long, but it was enough. Enough to confirm what I had felt for years. She knew. She saw. And she said nothing. I sat on the carpet with that letter in my lap, not crying, just undone. The betrayal wasn't just Ellie's anymore. It was Mom's silence, her complicity. The good woman who made pot roast and braided my hair had stood still while I was erased. I took a breath, picked up my phone. I texted Ellie. We need to talk. About the video. About the letter. Her reply was almost instant. We'll talk tomorrow. I didn't believe her. I opened my email. Typed one line. I have evidence. I will share it. Attached the video. Took a picture of the letter. Addressed it to every living relative I had. Then I hit send. Moments later, my screen froze, then unlocked itself. All my notifications, gone. Photos deleted. I stared at the screen, my fingers numb. She had always been one step ahead, but not anymore, because now I knew what I was fighting. And now I knew who I was. I called Thorin, my neighbor. Asked him if he still had that old metal trunk from when Mom stored the Christmas stuff in his garage. He said he'd check. While I waited, I laid everything I had on the kitchen table. USBs, flash drives, printed emails, voice memos, sorted them like tools. Not for revenge, for truth, for proof. I whispered out loud, I won't be defined by the parts you tried to erase. Midnight came, and with it, a text. You should have left this buried. I sat at my desk, laptop open, lines of code and banking statements before me. I meant to check one thing, just routine review, and yet my stomach dropped. A notification blinked on screen. Your account information has changed. I frowned. I'd just logged in earlier, saw nothing unusual. Now address lines shuffled, suffixes added to my name, fields I never touched. It wasn't theft, it was erasure. Someone was rewriting me. I leaned back. My mind pulled me to years ago. Ellie leaning close, asking for my social security number under the guise of just in case for safety. I gave it without thinking. She never asked for it again. Until now. That night, my phone buzzed again. An email with the subject line. The truth you never saw. I opened it, hands cold. Inside were scans of her teenage diaries. Handwritten lines about envy, fear, calculated silence. One jumped out. I always hid it from you, but I always knew you were what Mother loved most. My pulse thudded. Poison wrapped in denial. She wasn't just working in shadows. This was the blueprint of her resentment. A photo followed. A younger mom, holding me close. A note in margins, scrawled in my sister's pen. Want to be held too. Tears blurred my vision. Fury flickered hot behind my chest. This wasn't random cruelty. It was years of cold planning. Under the glare of streetlights, I drove to Ellie's house. No lights on. The night was still, too still. I parked down the street and walked up. Every step felt like mine sinking in quicksand. Outside her door, I held my phone, recording audio. She opened it just a crack, lips tight. Her eyes held something dangerous, recognition, surprise, and rage. You tampered with my identity and buried your jealousy in code, I said, voice low but firm. That's why you walked away. She said nothing, just stared, then slammed the door. I tapped the mailbox, left a single sheet, a printed email screenshot. Under dim porch light, I waited for a moment, or maybe minutes, until I turned and walked back to my car. That night, I called Thorin. He came over quietly, hands full of letters and dated photos. One photo, my mother, younger, hugging me. On the back, in Ellie's handwriting, you always had a place she couldn't keep. A letter followed, old checkbook records made out to both our names, hidden from me all this time. Proof of her sneaking in on what should have been mine. Together, we arranged for digital backups of everything, copies stored off-site, firewalls, encrypted drives. Later that evening, I reset every password, authentication code, set up multi-factor locks. At midnight, my phone vibrated. Another blocked call. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted her. "You are done rewriting me." Locked the phone, placed it face down. Then, in the early morning hours, I opened the door to grab mail. Her teddy bear, my childhood bear, on the doormat. One arm torn, one eye missing. Beside it, a note. "You're never safe." The room buzzed with low conversation as I stepped into the community center. Folding chairs in neat rows, a modest podium with a thin microphone, banners about family legacy and healing. I scanned the faces, some familiar, many distantly so. Cousins, neighbors, reporters. The air was heavy with anticipation. In my hand, a folder thick with paper and memory. Proof. My breath was steady, but my hands trembled. The fake apology Valise had sent just days before still rang in my mind, words dripping with practiced regret, timed just before tonight's event. She wanted to appear changed, reconciliatory. But I wasn't here to soothe, I was here to end it. Valise took the stage first. Her voice was soft, measured, full of sorrow. She called the past complicated, said she was young and overwhelmed, that she hoped the family could heal together. I watched the room. Some nodded. A few wiped their eyes. She ended with a line that almost sounded rehearsed. "I've made peace with my mistakes. I only hope you'll meet me halfway." There was a beat of silence. Then the projector behind her buzzed to life. At first, Valise smiled, then turned. The smile died. The screen flickered, then rolled into footage. Diary pages, her handwriting. The line I couldn't forget. "I always hid it from you, but I always knew you were what Mother loved most." Gasps broke across the room. The video of her whispering to our mother, the distorted birthday clip, the email sent to me from an anonymous address, each played in sequence. She rushed to the podium, fumbled with the remote. "This wasn't approved. This isn't part of the program." But the AV team didn't stop it, and then the lights brightened. I walked toward the stage, calm, steady. "I didn't ask for silence anymore," I said into the mic. "I brought the truth." The room was still. I unfolded the last diary page, read it aloud. She wrote, "I buried my envy, but it always had claws." No one spoke. I let the silence sit. Then, for years, she altered stories, changed records, faked forgiveness. "I didn't come here to humiliate. I came here because I'm done being erased." Some in the audience looked at Valise, others looked down. She stood frozen. "The light doesn't lie," I said. "Only the ones who live in its shadow." Valise turned and darted off stage. 2 staff followed. I remained, heart pounding, every inch of me shaking but solid. A few relatives approached. Quiet voices. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Thank you." A reporter asked if I wanted to make a formal statement. I said simply, "Truth isn't vengeance. It's peace." I gathered my folder, walked through the side exit. Outside, it had started to rain. I didn't run. I didn't cover my head. I walked to the car, letting the water fall, letting the heat rise off my skin like something I no longer needed to carry. Hours later, at home, the knock was soft. I opened the door. There she was. No mascara, no script. Just Valise. She didn't ask to come in. Her voice cracked. The apology was fake. I thought if I controlled the story, I could still matter. I nodded, slow. "You wanted forgiveness," I said. "I wanted my voice back." She didn't reply. She turned, walked down the steps. I shut the door behind her, quietly, firmly. Later that night, as I reached for my phone to set an alarm, a notification blinked. "Press rally tomorrow. She's speaking next." The sun crept slowly through the blinds, warming the hardwood floor beneath my feet. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, wrapped in a thin sweater, tea in hand, and stared out at the porch where wind teased the edges of yesterday's newspaper. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel the need to brace for something else falling apart. My body was tired, but something deeper, my spirit, felt still. It wasn't about winning, not anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been chipped away piece by piece, my sense of what was real, of who I was. The folder of evidence no longer sat on the table. It was filed away, not because it didn't matter, but because I didn't need to carry it like a weapon anymore. A soft rustle near the door. I walked over. No knock. Just a letter slid beneath the frame, cream-colored envelope, familiar handwriting. It wasn't from Valise, Aunt Margot. I opened it carefully. She hadn't been part of much, always a bit removed, more likely to offer a shrug than a hug. But her letter was different. She wrote about regret, about having seen signs and saying nothing. "Silence is the easiest sin," she wrote. At the bottom, "If you'd like to meet for coffee, I'd like to listen better this time." I folded the letter, set it on the counter. Then I opened the door, stepped out onto the porch with my tea, and let the cool morning air wash through me. I reached for my journal and wrote slowly, "Truth demands courage, not applause." Later that afternoon, I met Aunt Margot at the small diner off Route 19. She was already seated, coffee half full, hands wrapped around the mug like she needed it to anchor herself. She looked up, and for once didn't start with small talk. "I knew," she said. "Not all of it, but enough. I thought if I said something, it would break your mother, or tear things apart. So I stayed quiet." I stirred cream into my tea. "Silence feels safe, until you see what it cost." She nodded. "You deserved better." I let the words settle. "We can't rebuild everything," I said. "But maybe we can build something better." She smiled, not wide, but real. "I'd like that." Back home, I didn't go back to old habits. I opened windows I'd kept shut for years, rearranged frames, added new photos, ones I'd always meant to print but never had the heart to hang. I boxed up the remnants of Valise's things she'd left behind. Old scarves, a half-used planner, books she claimed she'd return for. I donated them the next day. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to a voicemail I hadn't opened in years. Mom's voice, faint from age and static. "You were always braver than you let on, baby. Don't let anyone dim that." I didn't cry. I just let the words fill the room. Then I breathed them out. Sunday morning, I drove out to the cemetery. A bouquet of lilies in one hand, a framed photo in the other. Me, smiling, standing alone by the lake, hair blown back, no one else in the shot. I laid the flowers down gently, first at Dad's stone, then at Mom's. "I wish you'd protected me more," I said softly. "But I've learned to protect myself." I placed the photo between the two headstones, not out of spite, but as a marker, a beginning. On the gravel path back to the car, my phone buzzed. A cousin had sent a photo. It was from the night at the community center. Aunt Margot, standing, speaking into the mic. The caption read, "She said you taught us all something." I smiled, not because I needed anyone's approval, but because some things do change, quietly, without fanfare. Back on the porch, I reflected. Closure isn't always neat, but it's real when you stop needing to prove anything. I understand forgiveness now, not as permission, but as a line I draw for myself. I didn't change every lock because I hated who had keys. I changed them because I needed to feel safe in my own story. And for once, I do.